A abrupt emergency. We are wrestling.
Been a fan of AEW since day one.
Did you ever think that we'd be, talking about a topic like this?
We are Wrestling Extras!
What is up? We are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide. I'm the host with the most, Mr. We Are Wrestling himself, the best One Donnie here with...
What is going on? We are Wrestling Maniacs. Ben here, a third of We Are Wrestling. So we're diving into something different for an extra today, and it turned out to be really, really great. But before we get into that, Don, hit him with it.
That's right, and I'm really excited about this, and I really hope we can start doing more documentary reviews. I think that this is definitely something new, something interesting, and on the We Are Wrestling channel, we like to evolve, we like to try different things out. But before we dive into the Cody Rhodes documentary, if you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, and you're not a part of the thousands of subscribers, we recommend you to hit that subscribe button now, turn on the post notifications, videos be coming out of nowhere like an RKO, and of course you already know the grind is real. And if you're listening to the podcast, we recommend you to give us a 5-star review, not just a 5-star review, but a best one review.
Yeah,
but with that being said, let's dive into the Cody Rhodes documentary. So, Ben, what was your thoughts on this 2-hour documentary that WWE produced exclusively to Peacock?
Very thorough. If there's a word to describe it, very thorough and creative. 100%. Like even just the metaphor of Cody Rhodes like walking through a desert, and every single thing he stumbles upon is something from his past, and we get a dive in on all of those details. And it's all leading up to how he became the American Nightmare and the Cody Rhodes we know now, and all of his trials, tribulations, his highs and lows, his defining moments that made him realize that this is something that he was born to do, the moments that made him realize that he had to recalibrate, take a step back, and do things he wouldn't naturally do, but deemed necessary to do to further his career. And, we got to see the birth of who he is now. And he is definitely the sentiment of, you're going to fail a million times before you finally hit it. And it's just the way that the whole thing was played out was just incredible. It was, you had amazing cameos and, people speaking on behalf of him that are legends, people that don't even like him in real life were in this fucking documentary saying nothing but good things about him. It just, you had the likes of The Undertaker in there. You had Seth Rollins in that shit. Like, you had fucking Matt Cardona in that shit. It's insane. And, you got some shots, and some time to shine from AEW, how that came about. And the nuts thing about it is that Vince McMahon was one of the top executives producers on this fucking entire documentary. So that shows how impressed and moved he is by Cody's story. It's like, yeah, there wasn't, he really did have to leave in order to really recreate himself and who he is. And, Matt Cardona made me realize in that documentary, fucking he's taking a page out of Cody Rhodes' book and really making buzz around the indies for himself and putting himself even more over without WWE's help. And
there's a lot of guys and girls that are doing it these days.
Yeah, because of Cody Rhodes.
You can make a steady living too, just wrestling in the independent circuit, but you just have to do it right. And Cody Rhodes really was smart that way.
He was smart about all of his
McIntyre was another guy that took that approach as well, and paid off.
Look at where they're at. Look at where they're fucking at, man. Like I said, dude, like this documentary really, it showed a lot of great backstage moments that I didn't even think fucking existed. Like seeing him after his match at WrestleMania with Seth when he came back was moving as fuck. Like Dusty would be proud. 100%. Watching this documentary, Dusty would be fucking proud. 100%. It finally came, even without the title or the story being finished yet, it came full circle, man. And
This, in my
I
opinion, man,
hate
was one of the best produced WWE documentaries I've
the
ever
biggest
watched.
takeaway for this for me is that I hate that Dusty wasn't around to see some of the best, if not the best moments of Cody's career, and it ails me, and it's gonna forever ail me because Cody has come so far than just dashing Cody Rhodes, fucking Stardust. Like he's come so fucking far, and I just again the biggest takeaway is that Dusty isn't here to see it.
My favorite thing about this documentary, because I talk about this all the time on the podcast, I'm a huge advocate for independent wrestling, and I loved
Everything.
seeing Northeast wrestling in this
Yes,
documentary.
dude. I was actually saying that. I was
Including
watching
the
it.
promoter talking about Cody's time in Northeast wrestling.
Dude, like I said, I was
Loved it.
watching it and I was watching it in my bedroom. I was laying on my bed watching it for that 2 hours, and my girl was out dyeing her hair in our bathroom because we have a bathroom inside our bedroom. And the moment I saw Northeast Wrestling, I was like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, I was hyped, dude, because I'm just like, dude, I've been there, and I didn't realize that he had done this. And something that else that stood out to me is after he left WWE, he had a whole list of people he wanted to wrestle, and he just uploaded it as a tweet, like, "Yep, this is what I'm doing next." I'm like,
Yep.
that's actually clever. Nobody's
It was
ever taken
very
that
clever,
approach.
man.
He really
And
did made smart
that's
decisions.
That's the thing about a lot of these, former superstars. They don't utilize Twitter and they don't reinvent themselves, because a lot of the times they will do the same act that they did on television, and it can only get you so far within your career. And I think one thing that I took away from this documentary was Cody had to go out and, reinvent himself.
Yeah,
And
entirely.
that's what he did. And that's what caught WWE's eye. And Kevin Owens, one of the best lines ever. Vince
He flew to
had
him.
to fly to his house.
He's like, not many people can say that. Vince flew to him to go bring him back home. And I think one of the most impressive things about this entire documentary is that Cody, man, like, not only did he have to go out and reinvent himself, but he worked for it, dude. Like, all of his decisions were super smart, but they were simple and they were done at the right times. He did them and approached them the right way. It's like his mind for the business. That's another takeaway for this documentary. His mind for the business is unmatched. He made all the right decisions. Like, he stuck it out when he had to. He left when it was necessary. He didn't go too far. Like, yeah, he admitted that he fucking kind of drifted a little bit, especially, with the sledgehammer fucking angle in AEW. Like, but he doesn't regret any of it because that was a huge part in making him a star, because Triple H is his favorite wrestler of all time. It's been said on record, like he idolizes him. So to make those big moments, that takes guts, bro. And to go out and prove it and back it up, dude, like, for Vince McMahon to be that impressed to fly to your fucking house, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, you're doing something right, kid. And you just basically solidified your place in the Hall of Fame right there. Like, right fucking there.
One thing that I did have listed here that I thought they could have done better was, I did wish, and I know Vince McMahon was hands-on with this documentary a lot,
Yeah.
so he wanted to be more behind the scenes. I wish we did get that cameo from Vince McMahon talking about flying to his house. I really wanted to know about that and like why he wanted Cody back.
So the biggest thing that I'm going to tell you, this was probably filmed amidst the allegation shit. So he wasn't going to do anything publicly. Because if you noticed, the last bit of it from like his Royal Rumble return all the way to his loss at WrestleMania was super rushed. Like, it didn't have as much depth or substance comparatively to, like, his catalog of, the Hall of Fame, to his debut, to Legacy, to fucking dashing Cody Rhodes, to him getting his face fucked up. Like, there wasn't much substance, and I didn't expect Vince to be a part of this because it was mostly in production through this entire time to fucking, to get it out. And a lot of it was probably during that time he was going through the allegations and had to step down, and probably didn't want to bring bad publicity into it because they want good viewership on it.
Yeah, they
Clearly,
wanted it to be spotlighted on
So,
Cody.
so
That
I
makes
feel
sense.
like that's why he didn't. And
I
honestly,
will say
good
though,
call.
having Bruce Pritchard on there though, that was a
It
good
helped.
thing.
It definitely helped because he was there. It was him and Bruce Pritchard
That
that
is
flew
one
out.
of Vince McMahon's right hand man.
So the fact that Bruce Pritchard was there made up for it for me because he was there when it happened. Like he was very much a part of it. Yeah, he wasn't the chairman, but he was present. So,
But in the documentary, I don't think during that time when they were talking about the flying to the house, I don't think they added that cameo in from Bruce Pritchard, from like what I remember.
no, it was
He like talked
somebody
like
said it.
throughout the he talked throughout the documentary, but I know at that point that was more Cody and I think Kevin Owens because Kevin Owens made the comment.
No, for sure, but like I meant like having Bruce Pritchard's presence in general in
Oh
this
yes,
documentary made up for
yeah, no,
Vince's
you're absolutely
absence.
correct.
Yeah, that's all I was referring to. But yeah, he was there when it was him and Bruce that flew out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But now we're going to dive into this chapter by chapter because one thing that WWE, does a fantastic job with their documentaries is really going back into time and starting off the Becoming Cody Rhodes documentary. It started off with the early life when he was a kid, being a second generation, superstar before, he wanted to be a wrestler. They, covered his, athletics in school and, even, after high school, going to Hollywood with his sister as well. They
Yeah.
covered a lot of his things, in his early life. How did you feel about that?
It's interesting, it's always interesting diving into, superstar start because I feel like we don't get a lot of those personal moments and like the very little moments. And like I said, if there's anything that summed up this documentary, it was thorough. We got to learn a lot. We got to learn, where Cody got his vast vocabulary. We got to see where specifically he was, trained as, an actor for his promo work, etc. And it also showed the growth, and we got to see, firsthand looks at the people that really helped him with his career and who helped utilize and turn Cody Rhodes into who he is. So I think it's interesting. I always think that it's important to talk about and to not, I guess, expose is the best way that I can put, this together. To expose those earlier moments that helped form you, the things that you don't mention, like, acting school, for example. A lot of wrestlers, they don't mention like where they got their, skills for promo work. Sometimes it just comes naturally because they're just a naturally, extravagant person. Other people, they have to take the classes because their promo work is just not that good and they need to, brush up on it.
And that's the thing that's interesting too. Like, I didn't even know Cody Rhodes did the acting stuff until watching this documentary. And I know there's some guys in the business. I know The Miz, he used, MTV. He used like reality shows to, get comfortable on camera and on the microphone. MJF, he did acting classes, before, training. So like there are some guys that, really think about that. And I think, if you're trying to become a pro wrestler, definitely something you should consider before or after you're done training because, personality, talking on the microphone, promos, interviews are very important. And I think Cody Rhodes, being a second generation superstar, he knew how important that was. So I think that was definitely a smart, strategic, strategy for Cody, to get in the business.
No, for sure. I agree.
But I got to say, I really liked, covering his high school with, the amateur wrestling and the football. I thought that was very interesting. We got a cameo, from his coach, wrestling coach, and, just seeing the hard work that he had to do as a kid to, try to be, the best, amateur wrestler in his area. He's had that work ethic his whole life, and I think the documentary really shows it.
No, 100%. Like, again,
and
it's
why he's in the position that he is in right now.
Yeah, he didn't just, live off his dad's shadow. Like, yeah, he wanted to please him and impress him, but he didn't take advantage of it. Like, he really just worked for a lot of it, Like, he was a workhorse naturally, and that's why he stuck it out for almost a year after the fact that he thought Stardust was done, you know? It's again, it's so very crucial to really highlight a lot of those earlier years because it shows what kind of person you are too.
Man, the home videos, that added so much to the early life.
Like I
Just seeing
said,
Dusty on his couch, man,
seeing
that
all
was
of
so
these,
cool.
seeing this documentary really showed a lot of the old school ways of how great WWE used to be. You know, it really showed what WWE used to be, and that's another thing that made this documentary so great.
And then I loved like the cameo from like The Undertaker because
Yeah,
he
it's a
was the
big superstar.
godfather of the locker room. And to even like have him acknowledge Cody Rhodes, who is, in new school wrestling right now, that was pretty cool to see because with that whole, torn pec thing,
Bro, Taker,
a lot of people these days cannot get away with doing that.
listen,
And
if
Cody,
Taker shows
went
up on
out
your
there and
behalf,
he worked.
it's not even just the pec
That's
injury.
very
If
old
Taker
school,
ever
man.
comes up on your behalf, you've made it. Taker went up to bat for him in this documentary. Like, he had nothing but great things to say, and he wasn't even referring to it as Dusty's kid, Cody. Like, he
Straight up.
made his own fucking entity, and even the Undertaker acknowledges that. Like, and he is. This is going to be a hot take, but arguably, I'm going to say it. Undertaker is the greatest of all time.
Oh,
He
he
is
is.
the
There's no
greatest
question.
of all time. He can do it all. He is just a different kind of animal. Like, and if he is in your corner, you can't say the dude sucks. You may not like him, but there's no denying it. There's no denying his talent. Just to get a stamp of approval from the greatest of all time, that solidifies you.
That was a
So,
really cool cameo
That was
there.
I got chills for him, dude. Shit.
Man, I bet. But that's the thing. Like, one thing I did wish that we did have in the early days, I would have loved to hear Dustin Rhodes. But I think there must
know
have been,
why.
some things with AEW where
why.
they couldn't
Yeah.
do it. I just wish like they did have like some stuff in the past.
Yeah, like
where
older
Dustin
shit.
talked about him, but maybe
He
they
showed
didn't.
up. So yeah, he showed up in the Hall of Fame speech. They didn't cut him out. None of that shit. They had fucking Dusty. They showed his
but
Gold Dust
imagine
run.
like hearing
Yeah.
his relationship with his brother. That would
Yeah, that would have been
pretty
great.
cool, too.
Yeah.
But I understand, like, you only have so much time to cover all this stuff,
And
and
they only want to
they-
give AEW so much exposure.
exactly, and we already know we're going to be diving into that.
And they
Forbidden
gave him
Door
a
stuff
decent
later on.
chunk. So
Absolutely. But now we get into the early days of his pro wrestling career. He talked about, how he left Hollywood, drove 48 hours to go home and tell his dad he wants to be a pro wrestler.
Yep.
And, he talks about his time in OVW being like college and then,
yeah.
getting into, his main roster run when he wasn't ready.
That. Oh man, it sucks. It sucks when you know you're not ready and you have no choice but to be, because that causes for chaos and failure. And it sucks because I feel like if they had just held out for maybe another year, maybe another 2 tops, maybe things would have turned out differently, because just 2 years time, a lot of difference can happen, a lot of change, a lot of evolution happens. So had they just waited a little bit more for him, I feel like things would have turned out differently and we would have gotten the speed run a lot differently. And hell, maybe Dusty would have been alive to see a lot more of his greater aspects. But like Cody said, it happened for the Code Man. It just took time,
Hey, everything happens for a reason.
Every
in life,
story
and
has revisions, man.
Man,
And
if Cody's
Cody went out and
story
did
was
it.
easy, we wouldn't have gotten this incredible documentary.
Bro.
He wouldn't be as over as he is now.
That is the best thing I could possibly say, is that every great story has multiple revisions, and Cody went out and did that. He went out, he tackled it on the indies, he started literally the biggest rivaling promotion since WCW, and he came back home. And it just, it's amazing, and I feel like the time where he knew he wasn't ready was so crucial at the same time. So it's like, you could take what I just said about, how they held off X, Y, and Z, but it feels more organic the way it worked out, you know? Like, I feel like he had to go through this shit. I feel like he
And I
had to
feel
go out
like
and prove
that's the
something.
thing about a
He
lot of
made us
these
believers,
legends
bro.
and Hall of Famers. They all go through the trials and tribulations, and Cody was one of them.
Cody is the sentiment of if nobody believes you, make them believe. And he did. And
Because remember, John
Vince
Cena
flew to his house.
before Basic's, Thugonomics.
You mean talking
Before,
about the prototype?
yeah, he
It
started
took
off
the
as a
one slap.
prototype. And then it even started off, he came out ruthless aggression
That was the one moment. That
in
was
the
his
tights,
moment.
man.
That was the moment that changed his entire fucking career, and he became John Cena.
But here's the thing. He felt like he was about to get fired until all it took was Stephanie McMahon hearing him on the bus doing freestyle raps. And that's what really took off, his career, because he was always a
Basic
fantastic
thugonomics.
performer in the ring, but he needed that personality.
He was green.
And the thugonomics stuff, the rhyming, the rapping, that really brought the best out in John Cena. So a lot of these greats throughout the years, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he was the fucking ringmaster at one point.
And wasn't
The
he like Stunning
ringmaster.
Steve or something like that?
Stunning Steve in
Yeah.
WCW. So like Stone Cold even had to go through it. Triple H, he had, the Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Rocky
Yeah.
Maivita. There's so many greats that had to go through it. And I think in the documentary, they definitely showed, his green side. I did really like Randy Orton in this documentary as
absolutely.
well, because he was a mentor and he really did, guide
He helped shape
Rhodes
Cody
into, going from being a green performer
Randy
who had
Orton.
a lot of potential to, becoming a regular, mid-card guy in WWE when he first
So
started.
Randy Orton was the guy that got Cody Rhodes to separate himself from trying to be his father. He was the one that taught him that a second generational superstar doesn't necessarily mean copy your dad. And if anybody with a fucking logical brain knows, Randy is the fucking poster boy of, yeah, I'm Cowboy Bob Orton's son, but I ain't fucking anything like him, and he's his own fucking entity. And Randy Orton was the one that taught him it can be done. And that's why his fucking mentorship was so crucial to fucking Cody.
And I think, the Legacy faction really did help Cody Rhodes get comfortable being a regular on, TV. I think
And a
it
heel.
definitely did good things for him and Ted DiBiase.
Heel runs are the fucking answer to your fucking stale babyface plummets. Because look at Dominic.
Example.
That's exactly where I was going. Dominic Mysterio, the perfect example. Your fucking stale babyface runs can be saved by a heel turn. 100%.
Yeah, Gable Steveson right now, he's going through that. Pretty soon, he's going to have to
He'll be a
turn
fucking heel. Oh, dude, he's going to be a dominant fucking heel, too.
Yeah. But now, with Cody Rhodes, in this documentary, we also got to see, his mid-card title run as well with the Intercontinental Championship. He got a whole new character after Legacy ended with Dashing Cody Rhodes. What was your thoughts on that gimmick around that time?
If I'm being honest with you, I fell off around this time. This is where I stopped for a while because it wasn't me. Like, it just wasn't my thing. And like every WWE fan, there is a time period where you don't watch. There's a certain mood that just does not fit your cup of tea. That was mine. However, I will say he did a phenomenal job because he really did, as Kevin Owens said, he really did make you want to punch him in the fucking face because he just thought he was better than you. And he did his fucking job really well. I'll give him that. It just wasn't for me, there wasn't that excitement for me, personally. But I don't take away from how great he sold everything that he touches, because anything that's given to him, he makes chicken salad out of chicken shit, as they were talking about,
Yep, chicken shit and the chicken salad. And that's the thing. I feel like the Dashing Cody Rhodes, that really did, they started going in the right direction with him.
Yes.
At this time, I felt like, the Dashing Cody Rhodes thing, because this is where I really was invested into wrestling. And, I was a fan of the Dashing Cody Rhodes character. I think it definitely did have a lot of potential. He really did make the Intercontinental Championship around that time very prestigious.
He did. I will say though, I was a bigger fan of what followed up with that, with his face getting fucked up,
On dashing Cody Rhodes.
and he got to fucking have one of the best feuds with Rey Mysterio in a long fucking time during that time, when he broke his nose from the
Man, I
619.
loved Undashing Cody.
Yeah, I think
Love
that was
character.
phenomenal. I seeing him a little bit more unhinged, we got to see a little bit more of an angle that was like, he was this perfect pretty boy, and now it's like I love the analogy that he approached with it too. American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale. That is one of my favorite movies of all time, and he nailed it. And
Can
like
I just
looking
say
back
this,
and
man?
knowing it now,
Anytime in a documentary when they talk about like
the
the ideas
inspiration for
behind the
shit.
characters, I love that. Absolutely fucking love that.
Because if you see American Psycho, again, one of my favorite movies of all time, it came out in 2000, and it was shot with a camera that made 80s movies, which is why it looks so grainy and so old, is because they shot it with an 80s camera. Mind you, it took place in the 80s too, so it helped the effect. That performance is one of the greatest, and now finding out that was the inspiration, it all makes sense to me now, and now it makes me want to rewatch that time era because I didn't understand the connection. And mind you, by that time I had already seen the movie, I just didn't put that connection there. But the moment he said it during the documentary, I'm like,
That makes sense now.
that makes so much fucking sense. Patrick Bateman, who is a perfect person, who has this routine of just facial care, body care, but he's a fucking psycho the moment something goes wrong. And he has literally murdered hookers. Like, that's basically what fucking Patrick Bateman did. He was just fucking crazy. And that's what he portrayed. And, like, now looking back at it, I'm like, dude, fuck. Like, that makes a lot of sense. And that shows the ingenious in it, And I just, I was really stoked on that.
And that's the thing that I also really liked about the whole Undashing thing. This is where he really connected with the audience because
Yes.
in WWE, you need to have a gimmick to get over. LA Knight's got the yeah thing going.
Yeah.
Daniel Bryan had the yes thing.
Yes.
And, Santino Marella had the Cobra. Mick Foley had Mr. Sacco. So with Cody, he had those paper bags.
And it fucking worked.
Got him over as, an arrogant heel.
Yeah.
You didn't want to see, your ugly face.
Yeah, dude. And it
people
worked.
Really, got into it.
And they started bringing their own fucking paper bags, man. It got over with the crowd. Like I said, if you're able to sway a crowd, you got it. You got it, baby.
Absolutely, man. But now we get into the downfall.
Yeah.
Of, his later time in WWE.
Stardust.
After the whole, thing with, Cody Rhodes and his brother winning the tag team championships with their dad, such a beautiful moment.
Fucking great.
They end up, pretty much, repackaging Cody Rhodes as Stardust. What were your thoughts on that around that time? Were you watching or?
I was on and off watching because I was heavily invested in his feud with Stephen Amell, who played the Green Arrow. So I was hugely into that feud. So I wasn't a fan of Stardust. I thought it was a great idea for kids, to really see a villainous character on the screen. It reminds me a lot of Danhausen now, looking at it in terms of quirkiness.
That's a great comparison.
I'll
give you that one.
I think it was great for the PG era and how PG it was at the time. And really molding worlds, especially with, again, the Arrow series and everything with Stephen Amell coming in. That feud, phenomenal. Stephen Amell is definitely green around the gills in front of a ginormous fucking crowd. But he is a phenomenal actor. He's I wouldn't say he's a martial artist, but he's in good shape. But it was still lackluster. It was cool seeing Cody go on fucking Arrow as Stardust, but not in the same gimmick or anything, not in the same face paint. He was an actual villain in the show multiple times. So it was cool in that retrospect, but it just, like they said in the documentary, it's not going to get you into a world title picture. You can't sell that character. Yeah.
Yep. I remember that. The Miz, saying that Stardust, mid-Carter at best.
If that, and not even, I couldn't even see a title around him, maybe tag team, yes, but Intercontinental, fucking, United States, I'm not going to see that shit on Stardust. And that's where Cody was like, dude, I can't keep doing this. Like my dream is to bring the title home that my dad was ailed from my dad. Like
But
I'm
I
not going to
love
do
the
it like this.
whole like not quit thing, and that's where I want to dive into this and have a conversation, because one of the highlights in this documentary was, Cody's resentment for, Dusty's NXT kids. That's something, they covered a little bit.
Yeah.
I wish they did a little bit more diving into that, because it was very interesting. What was your thoughts on that? Dusty, telling Cody to quit when, he had all these other kids that he was, getting ready to be the next generation.
I can understand both sides. Cody had already hellaciously been in the business at this point. It's like at this point, there's nothing more you can be taught. Like at this point, you have to take control of your own career. You're too seasoned. You're past the age bracket. You've had well more experience. You've held a major title in the company at this point. So there's no point in you going to NXT right now when it's specifically for rookie development. You're not a fucking rookie anymore. So you have to fly from the nest now. Your wings have been grown now. You can fly. And that's basically where I think Dusty was coming from, because it's like, listen, you're already established. You can literally do this on your own, and you kind of have to now, because NXT wasn't what it is now. There wasn't any really going back and forth as much as there is now. Exactly. So I can understand Cody's point of view too, because it's like,
but that's the thing about Dusty too. Like, I notice about him, he didn't want to get too involved in his kids' careers, including Dustin.
Exactly.
Which
And
I
that's
think
what I'm
is
saying.
the right way to approach it.
Exactly. And that's where I was going with it. It's like, it comes to a point where it's like, I can't make these decisions for you because it's legitimately out of my hands. Like, it's literally out of my hands. I can give you the best answer you could get, but it's up to you. And it's like, that frustration, I think, is what blinded Cody into realizing that, because it's like, all right, you birthed Seth fucking Rollins, and look where he is, but look where I'm at. It's like, and I'm literally your son. And I think he took that personal, because, that's his dad, and you should be looking out for, me first, family first. And I feel like the frustrations of what he's gone through and what the position that his dad was in is what really caused the friction. It's like, you have to, at this point. I'm here to make these guys make the jump to where you're at. I can't put you here and put you farther than where they're going to fucking go. Because that, not only is that a conflict of interest, but it's just completely ass backwards terminology. Mm-hmm. And Cody, with that frustration of his his shortcomings, the company not listening to him, and him knowing that he is so much more capable than he is being given. Yeah, that's going to cause a lot of blurred lines. So I think that's where it really came through. It was all emotionally driven. So I think that's where it's at, and I think that's what. And
I think they covered this well. I did wish that they, showed more about that, because it was getting a little interesting there. Because I always love, the drama. I love when they give, the scoop, so they keep us in the loop.
That's the toxic wrestling part in you, fan.
Yes,
that's the toxic wrestling.
I do get a little bit of that from Danny.
No, we all have it deep in ourselves, bro. We all have it deep in ourselves.
But nobody has it as deep as Danny. But honestly, like, my thoughts on, this, part in, the documentary, it was very interesting, because I understand from both sides, like you were saying. Dusty, wanted what was best for Cody, and Dusty knew what Cody needed to do was get out of WWE, because you're not going to be able to go from Stardust back to like dashing Cody Rhodes or undashing Cody Rhodes. You have to reinvent yourself. And that's something that there's only so many times you can do that. And around that time, Cody already did it enough to where he wouldn't have gotten to that championship that he has that picture of his dad on his mantle. He wouldn't have been able to do that. And, what his dad was telling him was, you just need to take your ball and go home. But Cody, 100%. His whole life, never quit. And that's why, he went through it and, Yeah, he kind of cost himself some years because of his stubbornness, but that's the person he is. He doesn't quit, he doesn't give up, and that's what molded him into this American nightmare.
Yeah.
And we're going to be, diving into that, but man, with Dusty, I was very shocked at hearing, Cody's side about that, because I understand that as well. Because, he wants his dad to be there for him. He wants his dad to help him, but there's only so much his dad can do. And, Dusty's over in NXT, helping Roman, helping Seth, helping Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, all of these guys that are going to be the stars of tomorrow. So it definitely was very interesting to hear Cody's side of things. And then also hearing like Sammy and Kevin and other people's, side of things when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But absolutely crazy, man, that like he really, had some resentment towards, them Dusty kids. I was very surprised by that. But, moving on now to the next part in this documentary, him finally deciding to tell Vince and to tell Triple H how he felt, and, starting the new chapter in his, career, going to the independent scene.
Yeah. It got bad, like stuck it out with Stardust another 8 months after knowing that it was done, that could take a lot out of a person. The dude was drinking to get fired because he couldn't bring himself to quit because quitting's just not in his blood, but it finally came through that he had to, because if he didn't, it probably would have, likely would have ended in divorce. Liberty probably wouldn't be around. It would have gone completely differently had he not left. And he made all of the right decisions. He showed up in every major promotion, was a star in every major promotion, made rumblings throughout every independent scene that there is, Northeast Wrestling, which we're very familiar with, Evolve,
so
Impact,
much.
NWA. Like, he's made fucking rumblings everywhere. He is a self-made traveling star, and Vince recognized that. And again, it comes down to how smart you are and how many smart decisions you can make. And Cody is one of the only ones that's hit every single one on the head and made his way back to WWE in the most triumphant way possible.
And that's the thing, like him, leaving to the independent circuit. I remember the first time meeting Cody Rhodes. I do remember, the first time watching him. It was at a Northeast Wrestling show. It was one of the field shows that they do, which is called Under the Stars. And around this time, Cody, he was, he had this list of people that he wanted to face. And I actually got to watch Cody Rhodes fight the Miracle Mike Bennett. And they put on a great match at the show. And Cody, did a lot of shows for, Michael and, Northeast Wrestling, and ended up winning their World Heavyweight Championship. And I watched Cody Rhodes, in the independent. During this time, this is where I actually got into independent pro wrestling, thinking about it now. Because I did watch Cody Rhodes wrestle for Blitzkrieg Pro a few times. I watched him, also wrestle for Northeast Wrestling multiple different times. And he was just all over the place. And he really put independent wrestling on the map.
Hell yeah.
But man, also another thing too that I really got to take away from this is, Cody really going out there and, redefining himself, because a lot of, former guys, they don't do that. And Cody, really paved a new way for a lot of people. And I was very impressed with that. But now we got to get into it, man. The Forbidden Door. AEW All In. We got to see some Being the Elite clips. We got to see, Nick and Matt Jackson a lot in this documentary.
Yeah.
And we even got to, hear Cody's, side of things with AEW, which was very interesting. What was your thoughts on Cody opening the Forbidden Door in a WWE documentary?
Produced by Vince McMahon. If not many people say that they can do that, Cody is one of a kind at this point, because he basically just put AEW on the fucking map in this one documentary. with the amount of fucking screen time these AEW superstars were on screen is fucking incredible. One, to see it, like I was even telling Ash, and she doesn't fucking know shit about this shit, and I'm just like telling her, like, dude, the amount of fucking screen time they just gave AEW, and I'm looking at her as I'm talking to her, like, the amount of fucking screen time they gave it, and she's like, like, dude, it's incredible. Like, I was blown the fuck away. I'm like, wow, they're really letting Cody tell his fucking side the way he wants to tell it. They gave him footage. They gave him, like, how All In was, produced. Fucking 11,000 fucking people for a fucking on a whim show was incredible. Incredible. That was, like, more packed than Monday Night Raw. Incredible. Like, my God, dude, just for fucking a shit ton of stars to bring everybody together for one fucking night and call it All In, and based off that success, AEW was born.
Man, it was a
Like,
crazy time.
Off a fucking whim. That is incredible. And to show all of these AEW talent, dude, like, kudos to Vince McMahon, number one. Like, I really have to give him a shout out for this, because I could not believe he allowed that much screen time for all of them, because
especially
he talked
Nick
about
and Matt
AEW
Jackson.
a lot.
I was super surprised.
That is what fucked me up. I saw Nick and Matt Jackson. I was like, and then for how long they were on screen, dude. Dude, and how long they were on screen, I was like, I could not believe what the fuck I was watching. For a second there, I forgot it was a WWE documentary, because I was just so shocked. I was just like,
I think
whoa.
what really helps this whole thing, too, is that Cody is such a big star now, to where
he's world known.
He wanted this documentary to be a certain way, and he got that. And I think that he was also thinking about it, not just for himself, but he was also thinking about it from all of us, we are wrestling maniacs.
I'm skipping forward in time.
We really got this insane story, especially with the Forbidden Door in a WWE thing.
So
the door's never been this opened before.
I'm going like forward in time, and I don't fucking care, because I want to say it. I'm going to tell you the line that really, like, gave me chills through the entire documentary. The one fucking line, and it was delivered by Vince McMahon. When they were talking about, bringing Cody back, he was like, that's not changing. And he pointed to his tattoo. He was like, yeah, it's not changing. He branded himself the American Nightmare, the Nightmare fucking brand. And Vince was like, oh yeah, no, we're not changing anything. It's not broken. We're here to buy it. I was like,
that was such a great line.
Fucking chills just thinking about it. Like, oh, it's not broken.
Insane.
We're here to buy it. And for Vince to say that himself, he's like, oh, we're not changing shit. We're here to buy it. That's what we're buying. Like, I was like, Vince not changing, buying? Like, dude, that shook me to the core. Like, that, because I'm like, for Vince to straight up fly to your house and said, no, we're not leaving without him. Like, we're whatever it takes. And the fact they said, oh, we're not trying to change anything. It's not broken. We're not, it's what we're buying is how it is. It's perfect the way it is. I was like,
and I gotta say this, WWE, man, they're always strategic when it comes to this stuff, because obviously this was Cody Rhodes' documentary, but putting that in there really opens the door for a guy like MJF, who's going to be a free agent in 2024, because the leverage that Cody Rhodes had,
and he's a Cody guy
with Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. That's the thing. A lot of these AEW guys
are Cody guys.
Molding into their own, like MJF, they're going to be able to have that leverage. And then hearing Vince McMahon, out of all people, especially with his ego, with all the stories that we hear, to hear him say, we're buying that. Imagine
it's immaculate.
They go to MJF's house and they tell him, we want the whole thing.
They wouldn't get away with the whole thing. Sorry.
Well, obviously not.
They wouldn't get away with the whole thing.
This opens the door more for these other talent to go out there, make yourself a star, get Vince McMahon's attention, and, you could become a big star in WWE.
Yes, sir.
That line was, I couldn't believe it, man.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, that shook me to the core. I'm like, Vince likes what he sees right off the bat, and he's trying to buy? What? What is happening? Yeah, dude, it fucking shook me.
And also, too, I feel like I feel so fucking toxic saying
Oh
this.
God. Oh God. What do you?
I'm just gonna say
Is
it
your
quick.
Danny showing?
No, this is not a Danny thing. This is nowhere
Oh,
near
okay.
a Danny thing.
Okay.
But a little bit like this is, I don't try
Say
to create
hot
the
take. If
war.
it's not toxic,
Okay,
just say
fine.
hot take.
Fine. It's a hot take. All
Okay,
right.
there we go. Yeah,
I
don't say
feel like
toxic.
they wanted to use the Being the Elite clips and they wanted to show the Young Bucks in this because they were trying to get them to go to WWE when their contracts are up.
Maybe. Who knows? I mean,
But
hey, it's good for
obviously,
business.
as we're
And it wasn't a
recording this,
shot?
it just came out that, the Young Bucks, Kenny, Hangman, they all re-signed multi-year deals with AEW, which Ben and I will be covering that Saturday before SummerSlam on the We
Yes,
Are
sir.
Wrestling podcast. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. But man, I got to say, like, with, the Young Bucks being featured in this, that they really opened up the door. I was impressed.
I'm genuinely like, I'm kind of fucking floored that they got as much screen time as they did. Like, I was like, I am watching a utopia right now. I am not living. This is all a dream. I am in a simulation. This is not real. Like, it was.
And I'm
It was
sorry
nuts,
to say
man.
this to, all the other wrestling fans out there. This is probably going to be how far the door opens.
Yeah, especially
We're
for right
not
now.
going to be getting a WWE AEW show at
Until
all.
Vince is gone, you are not going to have any chance. Just saying, no chance.
No
No
chance
chance
in
at
hell.
all. You've got no chance.
But that's the thing, man. But now, diving into his AEW run. Because, of course, after the independent circuit, after All In was such a success, him and, the Elite, they end up creating All Elite Wrestling. And we kind of got to hear, Cody Rhodes talk about how stressful it was, being an executive and, doing behind the scenes stuff and also, doing stuff, in the ring as well.
Yeah. He had some pretty great matches, and all of them were phenomenal. Some choices were very interesting. He did not want a world title, and it was a personal thing. I guarantee one of the personal issues that he had in what ailed him to leave is they really wanted to put the world title on him because Cody was a big draw, and the fans eventually turned on him because he refused to turn heel. And it's like, there's so much in there that, obviously he was still in love with WWE. It was apparent,
It's obvious.
like
he has the picture on his mantle.
Bro, all he wants
Dusty
is the
with the title.
WWE title, and that is all that has ever
And
mattered
can I
to him.
just
And
say
he
this
knew
too? They
he
did a
didn't want
great.
to.
Yo, I just got to say this too. They did a great job covering that Dusty Rhodes match at Madison Square Garden too.
What I think that
For us new school fans.
what I think that made it really personal was the fact that he didn't want his first world title because he knew that AEW was going to be successful. He knew, just by looking at it before he left, he knew. And I guarantee, desperately wanted to put the title on him, and he did not want to, make it seem like he made this promotion so he could finally cheaply achieve that dream. I think he wanted his first.
That's all he did during his run because of him being an executive. He was putting other guys over and he wasn't focusing on his career.
And
I think that's
you're
why
not getting any younger.
It leaned him more towards WWE.
And he wanted his first real world title win to be the one he has been dreaming about. And it's not an AEW world title. It wasn't for him, and it never was. And he wanted to do that before doing the world title for AEW.
Because Cody Rhodes, man, he, one of his craziest lines in this documentary was, "You better not cut this out." There was a personal issue that he had with AEW. And a lot of people, are speculating. A lot of people now have to play the guessing game because the only people that are going to know this is Cody Rhodes, Brandy Rhodes, and Tony Khan. And I don't think this is ever going to come out. Here's what I think happened. This is all speculation. Like you said, it was the AEW World Championship. My speculation, I think Cody wanted Brandy Rhodes involved more. And one thing in AEW during his run, which was lackluster, was Brandy Rhodes. She, did great behind the scenes, but on screen, she was trying to elevate the women's division, and they were trying to give her, roles on TV, but it just wasn't working out. And I think Tony Khan, probably realized that. And Cody Rhodes pretty much, was like, we're a package deal. And I think that there were some disagreements there because, Brandy Rhodes and Cody have a different vision than what Tony Khan has. And I think a lot of that had to do with Cody's decision going to WWE as well, because Tony Khan, has, taken more control and creative. And I think Cody didn't like the direction Tony Khan was going in with AEW.
That could be a fucking possibility, man.
Because
100%.
more people were coming in, like Bryan Danielson, Adam Cole, CM Punk. And the more stars that were coming to AEW, the more Cody Rhodes was starting to, go back into that mid-card picture. Not a household name. Yep. And I think that's where, he was a smart businessman. He negotiated with both Tony Khan and Vince McMahon, and he made the right decision to go to WWE because, man, he is way bigger in WWE than he was in AEW.
100%.
Impact, all of these other, promotions.
Yeah, and since we already talked about the segue of Vince McMahon, let's talk about Seth Rollins and his match at WrestleMania.
That's right, man.
Let's talk about his big return.
And
for months, we were speculating.
And I think that they did a great job here talking about his first run with WWE. And it was very interesting to hear Seth Rollins, talk about, Cody Rhodes in a positive way. I love how they both have issues, but they're both very professional about it. Instead of being like CM Punk and being the elite and like taking little shots at each other, Seth and Cody, they're both very professional at the end of the day. And they both, might not like each other. There might be a lot of jealousy and wrestling politics. But when it comes to, a podcast or an interview or a documentary like this, they still acknowledge one another, which I really like and I really respect about both individuals.
No, 100%, and I completely agree with that sentiment, It's so cool to see, them kind of still have that respect. They're more of the, hey, we're going to highlight all the good from each other and then just stay the fuck away from each other. There's a lot of personal issues there. There's not going to be any kind of friendship, and that's okay. But, to highlight all of the good things, the most professional thing you can do, because I was surprised to see, even Seth in there saying some really good things, nothing bad, and he just seemed really, honest about it. And it was also interesting to, hear that it wasn't even finalized until like 2 weeks before WrestleMania. So they were hyping up something that might not even happen, and it fucking worked out in the end. So it's really fun seeing documentaries like this, because you really do get that inside scoop that you want to really get the confirmation about and you really want to know about.
Man, that torn pec. That part of the documentary, whew, I had to close my eyes during that surgery.
Yeah, dude, I haven't watched the match since fucking Hell in a Cell, since the first night I saw it, and my God, it was just as hard to watch the second time. I couldn't do it, because I'm like, dude, this is a real injury. This ain't kayfabe. His shit looked like fucking he's turning into the Hulk, but got stopped halfway through. Like, it was rough to watch, man, and it genuinely looked fucking painful. And then to find out that he almost fucking threw up right before the ending of the match, I'm like, dude, you're fucking wild, bro. Wild.
And then just hearing the Undertaker, take his hat off for him and respect him. That was great.
Another big thing that I was pumped to hear too, again, just his voice messages he left Bruce and Vince saying hey, please don't cancel the match on Sunday. We got to do this.
That was
kind of cool.
Think about that, man.
Yeah.
That was such a great detail.
Yeah, it just to show that, to actually show the proof, so to speak, even though you don't really need it, but it's a nice little detail to throw in to make it even more real and to show you the in depth of how far it goes. So it just it's really cool.
I do think, man, that Hell in the Cell match with the torn pec, that really did help him, because a lot of the times when you have a bright baby face like Cody Rhodes, fans, they get repetitive of it. They get repetitive.
Yeah.
of it. They get sick of it after a while, and that happened in AEW with him. But I think the Hell in a Cell, going in there with that torn pec, you can't hate on that. You have to respect that. And I think that really helped Cody Rhodes a lot.
No, absolutely. And, even like, again, Seth reiterating, talking about, yeah, Bruce called me. He's like, yeah, Cody tore his pec. And he's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, but the fact that he didn't cancel it, and then like they had like what 4 or 5 doctors come in, they were like, yeah, he can do it all. He can lift, he can do
It's
it
already
all.
torn fully.
They're like, it's right off the bone. You can't damage it any further. And they're like, all right, well, I mean, if he wants to go, he can go, and then just surgery right after. And I was really feeling the old school Ruthless Aggression WWE.com exclusives of when they actually show the footage of the fucking surgery and you get to actually see it happen. I was like, oh my goodness, I can see the meat.
Very uncomfortable
to
watch, but it was still a cool addition.
Yeah, because like, you saw Rey Mysterio's knee surgery, fucking, you got to see fucking Triple H's quad surgery, all that shit, so it was kind of interesting to see that again and see the extensive, just to the extent of what the surgery rehabilitation's like, their doubts, what's going through their mental during that whole process. It's interesting to see those different sides of things than, us, the viewer, like, oh yeah, he'll be out and like, he'll be back in like 8-9 months, we'll see him. But in their minds, like, am I going to be able to? Am I going to be able to perform the same way? Is this going to deter my career? Am I going to have to retire sooner because of this? They think about those things. We don't. So it's interesting to see what that was like, from behind the scenes.
Even the rehab was pretty cool to see too.
Mm-hmm.
But now, diving into his return, going into WrestleMania.
Yeah, to like the Royal Rumble to Mania.
How did you feel? How did you feel about all that?
So I didn't expect much from this section, and
Same
like
here.
I said, this one I didn't really expect much from because again, it's still very early because we're in the same year. Royal Rumble, him winning, coming in number 30. I feel like he should have come in earlier. I feel like he should have come in at least number 20 or between 20 and 23.
Maybe 15.
Maybe even 15. Shit, maybe even fucking number fucking 2 or 3. Like I would have seen.
Oh my goodness, him and Gunter 1 and 2, and then they ended off with them too. That would have been great.
Fucking cringed for him when he was talking about that first initial slap to his fucking torn pec repair. He's like, oh, it made it feel like it came alive again. I was like, oh, I could feel it ripping off the. Like I was fucking cringing all over. I was like in Gunther's chops of all of them. Like, it's worse than Ric Flair. It's worse than Eddie Guerrero. It's worse than Chris Benoit. His chops are they're arguably worse than Big Show's. Like, if anybody has, like, the best chops in the business, it's likely Gunther. Like, it really is. So I'm like, that was no small smack. Like, that was a fucking pec shot heard across the world and definitely in his bones. Like, that dude definitely suffered from PTSD in that chop, dude. Like, that dude was probably shitting his pants. Like, oh, did he just fucking re-tear it? Like, hearing those details, is just so cringe and just what they really do go through, when they go through these big matches and everything. So documentaries are fucking sweet, man. And we really do got to do this again. We got to do this again.
I love talking about this, but that's the thing, like, I do want to say as well about, Cody Rhodes. I think because I was, scrolling, I wanted to see what other people thought about this documentary as well. And there's been nothing but positive things said about it. And one person, this really stood out to me, and I definitely want to share it. Because, of course, going into WrestleMania 40, there's a lot of, speculation. I know we've said it on the podcast, especially myself, that, Cody Rhodes will probably finish the story at 40. And somebody put this out there. After this documentary, I want to see Cody finish the story at 40. Because at WrestleMania 20, we got Chris Benoit in that, moment there when him and Eddie, hugged in the ring with the confetti. Yeah. WrestleMania 30, we got Daniel Bryan. He won both championships. The Yes movement really started. And then WrestleMania 40, another monumental mania, Cody gets that moment.
That's got to be it, man. That's got to be it. That's got to be the finisher. And I'm hoping for a very gracious feud leading up to that and putting it all over.
So before we close off our, Cody Rhodes documentary review, we got to talk about the biggest headliner in this whole documentary. A lot of people have been talking about this. Triple H's comments after Cody Rhodes, comments about AEW, calling it a secondary promotion. Unfortunately, we do got to open up them can of worms because
Okay.
everybody's talking about it.
All right. So I'm going to keep it short and simple and very blunt. He's not wrong. It is a secondary promotion. Is it the biggest rivaling promotion since WCW? Abso-fucking-lutely. Like really fucking close. It is still very secondary because one, it is very new. It has not been around nearly as long. They have not achieved as many accolades as WWE has. They have not gone through many as the locker rooms or have had nearly as much, oh my God, historical moments to even touch that landscape. Are they great? Absolutely. Do they have the potential of being the next WWE? Absolutely. But they are not right now. So they are indeed a secondary promotion, but that does not mean by any long stretch of a shot that it is a diss. It isn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are over exaggerating about this. And of
Yep.
course, this is the first time WWE really opened up the forbidden doors. So, of course, I understand why there's going to be those AEW fans that are like, Triple H is dissing us, this and that.
Go fuck yourself.
There's nothing that's ever going to be bigger than WWE. Let's just call it like it is. Back in the day, Vince
It's what put
McMahon
wrestling on
Jr.,
the
when
map.
he bought the, WWF from his father, he was buying all of these other territories and he created the World Wrestling Federation. And he started this whole, movement. And he put wrestling on the map. And then, of course, the Monday Night Wars happened. That's the first time WWE really got a rivalry going head to head on, cable television. And, Vince McMahon ends up buying WCW. And after that moment, nothing is ever going to be bigger than WWE. That's the truth. I don't think Triple H was dissing AEW at all. But come on. They gave AEW enough time in this documentary, so Triple H calling it a secondary promotion, who cares? Who gives a fuck? Honestly. And honestly, I can't believe the comments Tony Khan said about this. And yeah, me and you are probably both going to agree on how we feel about this. Tony Khan said this, and I quote, "We certainly won't be the secondary promotion at All In. We're number one in the UK on TV and with a record gate. I have a lot of respect for Cody Rhodes. I know there weren't his words, to be fair, but we're not secondary in a lot of markets."
Okay.
Yeah, that's my thoughts.
It's fucking egos just going at it at this point.
Yeah, pretty much. But I don't think there's anything wrong with Triple H's comments.
No.
He acknowledged AEW. And you have to
Yeah.
realize there's nothing that's going to be bigger than WWE.
Yeah.
It's like you look at all like worldwide media. You have these sport teams when they win championships. You have one player on each of these championship teams holding a WWE championship. They're all over ESPN. They're all over the place. Everybody knows what WWE is. They're globally. And there's nothing wrong with, with that, I think. And I think AEW toxic fans, they're taking it a little too far, over exaggerating. But is there anything else you want to add to, this review?
No, it's been solid. It was one of the best documentaries that I've seen in the last roughly 12 years. Like it was one of the most creative, most planned out, most thorough, and honestly one of the most forbidden door fucking documentaries we've gotten, and it was surrounded by somebody who really deserves it and has had a very illustrious career. So I'm really, really stoked for his future, and I'm stoked for him to finish the story.
In my opinion, this was definitely one of the best WWE documentaries ever produced. They really hit the nail on the head on everything from,
Right.
him being a child, coming from being a second generational, superstar to, his, beginning career in WWE, going, talking about the trials and tribulations, the highs, the lows. Then, the independent circuit, All In, AEW, the Forbidden Door. They did a fantastic job covering everything. I think, all the sit down interviews that they did, all the cameos, they did a great job. I think Stephen Amell did a fantastic job narrating this entire documentary. And Vince McMahon, executive producer of this, man, hat's got to go off to him because this was fantastic.
Hell yeah.
And I can't acknowledge how great this was even more
Hell yeah.
because of how good it is. But guys, let's hear what Danny has to say about the Cody Rhodes documentary.
What is going on, everybody? Danny Huckins here, man. 1/3 of We Are Wrestling, and unfortunately, I was unable to join live Ben and Donnie for this extra on the brand new Cody Rhodes documentary that just came out on Peacock on Monday, which was, I'm pretty sure, a more viewable or a pleasurable viewable experience than Monday Night Raw has been. So I know a lot of people probably watched that over Monday Night Raw Monday. But regardless, man, so the American Nightmare, the Cody Rhodes story, I believe that's the name of it. I love all the attention to detail within the documentary itself. You saw a lot of Cody Rhodes' high school, his amateur wrestling background, his football, his upbringing, they really went deep. They really deep dove into Dusty Rhodes as well as the American Dream, Cody Rhodes' father. And if you guys remember a couple months ago when Cody was feuding with Roman Reigns and, they were going to have the match at WrestleMania in Los Angeles, Cody Rhodes had a promo on SmackDown, I believe it was. SmackDown or Raw. Can't remember what show it was. But he talked about how Dusty Rhodes, was doing car commercials, not for the money, but so they would be able to keep their family vehicle. And they talked about that in this documentary, and just like little subtle hints and little subtle touches and details and just like that within this documentary were really cool. They talked about Stardust, they talked about Dash and Cody Rhodes, they talked about All In, they mentioned the Elite, they showcased the Elite, the Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks from AEW. And, they really deep dove into, they showcase NEW, man, Northeast Wrestling. Mike Lombardi, who is the founder of NEW in Connecticut. We frequent a lot of their shows in the area. They had a lot of footage of, those promotions and stuff like that. And a lot of, Cody Rhodes' indie stuff within this documentary. And I think that was really cool. And, I respect Cody Rhodes for the simple fact that, if it was WWE's way, I don't think a lot of those other programs or a lot of those promotions would have been showcased the way they were. WWE has a habit, and they've showcased it time and time again. They don't like playing well with others. They like being the only game in town. And Cody Rhodes pretty much said that, he would not do this documentary if he couldn't talk about AEW, if he couldn't talk about Northeast Wrestling, if he couldn't talk about All In, if he couldn't talk about the Elite. Just all these things made Cody who he was. Like after he left WWE as Stardust, he obviously made a name for himself on the Indies and, the American Nightmare when he went to New Japan and so they really deep dove into a lot of aspects of his life and his in-ring work and, his depression when it came to the Stardust character because he felt like, he was never going to be as successful as his father and, obviously wanted to get out of your father's footsteps. So I like that a lot about the documentary. I do say, man, I gotta say this is probably the best WWE produced documentary over the last at least 12 years, maybe even longer than that. I can't really think of one that was as complete as this. You know, they talked about from Cody Rhodes, you know, his high school amateur wrestling to, you know, his torn pec in the Hell in a Cell match against Seth Rollins, you know. So it's pretty much like a complete story from, you know, 2001 to now, you know what I mean? And they even obviously filmed it up until WrestleMania this year because they had some footage of that match in there. So it was a very complete documentary. I recommend everybody run out, check it out if you guys at Peacock. It's definitely worth watching. And anyway, those are my thoughts.
Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on the Cody Rhodes documentary. If you haven't watched it yet, go over to Peacock and go watch it. It's a 2-hour documentary, and man, this is really produced.
Hard-hitting.
But guys, if you enjoyed this extra and you guys want more documentary reviews, because I had a really good time doing this, and I'm sure Ben did as well, smash that like button now. If you're listening to the podcast, give us a 5-star review, not just a 5-star review, but a best one review, and download the episode. But if you're not a We Are Wrestling Maniac yet already, subscribe, turn on the post notifications, because tomorrow we're going live for SummerSlam, 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And before that, we will be having a brand new episode of the We Are Wrestling Podcast coming out, where we're going to be talking about the Elite signing multi-year deals with AEW and some more Vince McMahon news. The link's down in the description below. You can go follow Ben and I and Danny on our social medias and other YouTube pages, all that down below. And of course, to all the We Are Wrestling Maniacs out there worldwide, we hope to see you guys tomorrow on the watch along. And of course, you already know, we are taking over. Peace.
We are Wrestling Extra!